500 years ago, a legendary contract was forged between a man and a devil, a deal so infamous it was recorded in the classic novel Faust. But that story didn't end in the pages of a book. A drop of crimson blood seals a brand new pact, and this time the fate of the underworld is about to fall into the hands of a 15-year-old boy. So how does a supposedly normal high schooler end up tangled in a centuries-old demonic wager? Understand that we have to look at how the world really works. When people die, their souls are supposed to pass peacefully into the afterlife. But some spirits refuse to cross over, choosing instead to linger in the human world and cause absolute chaos. Take this little blue ghost, for example. He's spending his afterlife zipping around the city, flipping up women's skirts and thinking death is just a free pass to be a creep. He spots another target and moves in for the thrill, but he quickly realizes he picked the absolute worst victim. The purple-haired woman turns around and pulls out a glowing red talisman, revealing herself as an exorcist, the exact people tasked with hunting rogue souls down. Terrified, the perverted spirit screams and immediately bolts in the opposite direction, leaving her completely annoyed. But the ghost doesn't get far before crashing straight into a teenage boy who casually kicks the spirit out of the air and pins it to the ground. This is our protagonist, Shihun Cha. He might be a terrible student, but his physical stats are off the charts, and he knows better than to let a spirit escape his older sister's wrath. When Suin finally catches up, she doesn't thank him. Instead, she scolds Shihun for stepping on the spirit and tells him to stop playing exorcist, treating him like a helpless kid. While they bicker, the bruised ghost tries to sneak away one last time, only for Suin to instantly obliterate it with a massive thunder talisman without even breaking a sweat. Shihun can only sigh at her insane power, but despite his sister constantly babying him, he is secretly determined to train hard and become the greatest exorcist alive. For now, though, he's stuck bagging up the charred spirit and hauling it back to their family's exorcism clinic, where they keep the troublemaking ghosts locked up for good. Inside the compound, Shihun is busy using their captive spirits as literal soccer balls and sandbags to train. The spirits are already terrified of being sent to the afterlife, which they know is nothing but a dark, miserable prison where they'll be treated like garbage, and being bullied by a teenager is the last straw. Desperate, one of them makes a break for it. The runaway spirit shoots into the sky, only to slam face first into an invisible, electrified barrier set up by Suin. Catching him in the act, Suin scolds her little brother for terrorizing their prisoners. She reminds him that in exactly 3 days under the full moon, these spirits will be sent to the afterlife, so they deserve a little peace until then. She offers to spar with him using only her left hand, but Shihun suddenly remembers a terrifying appointment and bolts out the gate. As he rushes through the streets, pure dread washes over him. He knows he can never let his fiercely protective sister find out what he's really mixed up in. Just one day ago, Shihun was chasing down a rogue spirit through the city, desperate to catch it and prove his strength to Suin. Cornered, the ghost tried to use a random red-haired kid as a distraction to escape. But that was a fatal mistake. Without even flinching, the stranger obliterates the spirit in a single blow just for stepping into his personal space. The boy turns to shocked Shihun, amused that a human can actually see him, and introduces himself as Mephistopheles, a literal devil. Shihun is paralyzed with fear, realizing he's completely outmatched, especially when Mephisto promises that if he tries to run, he dies. Back in the present, Shihun sprints into an abandoned building, gasping for breath. Mephisto is already waiting on a high ledge, and with a menacing, predatory smile, he makes it crystal clear that he hates waiting, and his new human plaything better never be late again. Terrified of the red-haired girl's menacing aura, Shihun frantically apologizes and hands over exactly what she asked for, a copy of the classic novel Faust. The girl's eyes light up as she realizes this is the famous human book written about her, confirming that she is none other than Mephistopheles, the legendary devil herself. When they first crossed paths, she had casually introduced herself as Mephisto and demanded to know if he was familiar with the story. Realizing she was an actual, literal devil who threatened to kill him if he ran away, Shihun had no choice but to become her personal errand boy. Now, Mephisto casually mentions she spent the last 500 years waiting in the afterlife for Faust to be reincarnated, hoping the book might give away his current address. When Shihun explains it's just a piece of fiction, she tosses it right back to him, demanding he read the entire thing out loud since she hates reading. Trapped, our hero starts narrating the classic tale of how the devil and the human made a high-stakes bet, with Mephisto granting Faust youth, wealth, and victory in a desperate bid to corrupt his soul. But as Shihun reads Faust's righteous quotes about justice and stubbornness, the devil floating above him starts to lose her temper. Suddenly, Mephisto throws a massive tantrum, screaming that Faust is a self-righteous egoist and refusing to accept the outcome of their ancient bet. She insists she had practically won before God stepped in to interrupt, and she's absolutely certain Faust's reincarnation is hiding somewhere in this very city. Turns out, right before God intervened half a millennium ago, she secretly placed a hidden mark on Faust's soul so she could track him down in his next life. Shihun nervously asks if he might be the reincarnation, but Mephisto brutally shoots him down, noting that Faust wasn't nearly as dumb as him, a massive relief for our terrified exorcist. Complaining that the human world has been boring and that other exorcists just pretend not to see her, Mephisto decides she actually enjoyed story time. She immediately orders Shihun to fetch her another book, leaving the poor kid completely doomed as he's forced to drag back a copy of Dante's Divine Comedy. Mephisto finishes reading half of the Divine Comedy and absolutely loves it, even recognizing a few guys she knows from the text. Shihun connects the dots, realizing these kinds of books are exactly why living exorcists have been venturing into the afterlife world lately. But Mephisto warns him that human books barely scratch the surface. The underworld is an immense, ever-shifting landscape, so massive that even a devil like her doesn't know every corner of it. She drops a harsh truth about her home. While it's an absolute paradise for strong devils who just want to fight, it's pure agony for the weak who call it the hell of spirits. With a sinister smile, she casually offers to send Shihun there right now, forcing our terrified hero to frantically decline. Losing interest in torturing him for the moment, Mephisto decides to get back to her real mission of hunting down the reincarnation of Faust. She orders Shihun to bring more books and read her the rest of the story tomorrow before flipping away into the night sky. Left alone, Shihun is completely shaken, realizing he's just been drafted into serving a demon from a realm that acts as heaven for the strong and a living nightmare for the weak. Meanwhile, back at the temple, Shihun's older sister Suin is waiting, and she is absolutely furious. Standing with the perverted spirit she captured earlier, she's ready to wring her brother's neck for being late 2 days in a row. Shihun tries to stealthily crawl his way inside, but Suin catches him instantly and doesn't hold back, hurling a glowing talisman right at his face. He tries to block it, but Suin is on a whole different level. She hits him with a blockade talisman, instantly binding him in glowing ropes and slamming him into the dirt. Trapped on the ground, Shihun sweats bullets and lies, claiming he just lost track of time hanging out with friends. Miraculously, Suin buys it. She lets him off with a final, terrifying threat that she'll tear him to pieces if he's ever late again. Shihun breathes a massive sigh of relief, thanking his lucky stars she didn't find out he was actually hanging out with a literal devil. Still shaken by his encounter, Shihun carefully asks his sister if she's ever seen a devil during her trips to the afterlife. Suin's expression darkens as she confirms she has. She warns him that devils are the absolute apex predators of the underworld who actively defy the authority of God, and getting involved with one, especially a great devil, is practically a death sentence. Hearing that from a top-tier exorcist like his sister makes Shihun realize just how doomed he is. Running away from Mephisto isn't an option. When Suin suspiciously asks why he's suddenly bringing up devils, Shihun panics and deflects, aggressively beating up the perverted spirit for floating too close to his sister. Suin just sighs at the two halfwits brawling in the yard and tells Shihun to come inside for dinner when he's done. Later that night, Suin sits alone looking at an old family photo. Despite the recent surge in rogue spirits, she reassures herself that high-level threats like devils can't cross over from the afterlife. But even if they did, she knows Shihun will be safe, trusting that their mother's spirit is still watching over him. Meanwhile, Shihun's devil problem is only getting worse. Hiding out on a rooftop, Mephisto suddenly yanks him down as four hooded figures take to the sky. Shihun recognizes them immediately from his sister's stories. They're Azraels, the elite enforcers who maintain order in the underworld. Realizing they almost never visit the human realm, Shihun gets a brilliant idea. If they're hunting Mephisto, all he has to do is flag them down, let them arrest the devil, and he's finally free. But before he can snitch, he casually asks Mephisto how she managed to escape the afterlife in the first place. Her answer instantly shatters his hopes. She admits she just beat the living daylights out of hundreds of Azraels on her way out. To an archdemon like her, the underworld's elite enforcers are nothing but annoying flies, and she would have slaughtered them all if she wasn't in such a rush to find Faust. Hearing this, Shihun realizes he's completely doomed. Once the Azraels finally leave, Mephisto celebrates while Shihun wraps up reading the rest of the book. Still baffled by her obsession, he asks the million-dollar question: why go through all this trouble, waiting 5 centuries and fighting an army of enforcers just for one guy? Instead of answering directly, Mephisto points to an elderly CEO on the street below, surrounded by buying employees. She asks Shihun if the man is strong. When Shihun admits the old man is physically frail and relies on his workers, Mephisto scoffs. To her, humans haven't changed a bit in 500 years. Because they're weak, they hide in groups, deluding themselves into thinking the group's power is their own. She brags that she could corrupt a powerful CEO in seconds just by scaring him. But Faust was different. He was the one human whose soul was nearly impossible to break. Taking to the sky with a sinister laugh, Mephisto reveals her true motive. She wants a rematch. She's determined to forge a new contract with Faust's reincarnation and prove once and for all, without God interfering this time, that absolutely no human can resist the temptation of a devil. Back at the Cha household, Suin is busy setting up a massive magic circle to safely transport her captured spirits to the afterlife. Usually, Shihun is the first one begging to help with exorcist duties, but today, he is completely ignoring her to furiously pound away at a punching bag. Suin brushes it off as teenage rebellion, but the truth is far heavier. Collapsing in exhaustion, Shihun curses his own weakness. His parents were legendary exorcists and his sister is a prodigy, yet he feels like he inherited absolutely nothing. The sheer unfairness of his powerlessness eats at him. But his frustration is not just about his family legacy anymore. Mephisto's arrogant claim that all humans are weak and easily corrupted by demons is echoing in his head. Shihun is desperate to prove the devil wrong, and since his sister refuses to train him properly, he decides to take matters into his own hands, rushing out under the guise of meeting a friend. Meanwhile, the red-haired devil herself is getting a crash course in modern humanity. After 500 years in the underworld, Mephisto is utterly fascinated by everyday things like cars and helicopters. Faust happily plays tour guide, relieved that she is finally putting down the history books to experience the world firsthand. Their sightseeing is suddenly interrupted by a loud rumble from Faust's stomach. When the young man explains that he is hungry, Mephisto is genuinely baffled. As an immortal devil, she has never needed to eat, and the entire concept of taste is completely alien to her. Seeing a perfect opportunity to humanize the terrifying demon, Faust dashes off and returns with a steaming bag of spicy street food. He digs in, praising how delicious it is, which only leaves Mephisto staring at the strange red meal in total confusion. Gently, Faust holds up a piece and nudges the ancient devil to take her very first bite of human food. While the enforcers of the afterlife hunt for the red-haired devil, Mephisto is completely oblivious, busy draining Shihun's wallet on a rooftop. After complaining that human food lacks flavor, she bites into something spicy and instantly breathes a literal pillar of fire. But instead of hating it, the devil is obsessed. She compares the burning sensation to bursting magma and devours a massive mountain of spicy tteokbokki noodles, completely blowing through our hero's entire weekly allowance. Watching her feast, Shihun asks the ancient devil a serious question. How can he become stronger? Mephisto scoffs, bragging that she's never been defeated and has never needed teammates because only weak fools rely on others. She doesn't understand why a human would even care about power. Shihun confesses that his sister Suin and his late parents were all incredibly powerful exorcists, leaving him feeling completely talentless and weak in comparison. Mephisto bluntly tells him that weak people overthink things, but surprisingly she admits she doesn't actually consider him weak. For a human, he's incredibly resilient. Almost everyone else she's met either ran away in terror or tried to kill her, but he's the only one who has stood his ground just to talk. When Shihun asks how he compares to Faust, the devil rolls her eyes. She rants that Faust was just a boring, arrogant scholar whose pride she desperately wanted to crush. But Shihun is completely different. Because he isn't terrified of her and doesn't despise her for being a devil, Mephisto declares him the perfect, entertaining toy to keep her happy forever. But hanging out on a rooftop isn't enough for a battle-crazed demon. Complaining that her body is stiff from a lack of combat in the human world, Mephisto suddenly challenges Shihun to a fight. Our hero immediately panics, reminding her he isn't even an official exorcist yet and that a spar with her would literally kill him. To make it fair, the devil offers a massive handicap. She will only use a single finger. Seeing an opening, Shihun accepts the challenge. He might not have his sister's overwhelming spiritual power, but he's trained his physical strikes every single day. Stealing his nerves, he prepares to catch the ancient devil off guard with one perfect punch, hoping to finally win his freedom. Mephisto suddenly lunges at Shihun to test his limits, sending him flying across the arena with a single strike. When she casually checks if he survived, she laughs off her own excessive force, genuinely surprised that his frail human body didn't shatter on impact. Bored by how easily he goes down, the devil complains that she wants to find Faust quickly so she can return to the underworld for a real fight. Just thinking about strong opponents gets her so fired up that she accidentally unleashes her aura, a terrifying, deep-rooted flame that instantly engulfs Shihun in a blinding inferno. Mephisto panics, knowing the smoke from her demonic heart is hot enough to incinerate a mortal instantly. But right as the flames threaten to burn him alive, a brilliant blue light erupts from Shihun's chest, violently repelling the fire. As the smoke clears, both of them are left speechless. Mephisto stares in disbelief, realizing that a powerful protection talisman hidden deep inside the boy's body just completely neutralized her hellfire. The talisman crumbles to ash, having sacrificed itself in his place. When Mephisto interrogates him about it, Shihun is completely clueless, proving someone else secretly planted the immense ward inside him to keep him alive. Curious, the demon asks for his name again, pressing him for details about his family. Shihun mentions his overprotective sister Suin and the parents he never knew, Jinu-cha and Minha-o, who died right after he was born. Hearing those names, a sinister grin spreads across Mephisto's face. She actually knows them. Suddenly playing nice, she apologizes for the deadly smoke and promises to keep her power in check. But she quickly drops a massive bombshell, revealing that she has personally seen his mother and father in the underworld. Shihun desperately begs for details, but the truth is a total nightmare. Mephisto explains that while normal souls go to the afterlife to be reincarnated, his parents are permanently trapped. They foolishly signed a contract with the most vicious, wicked being in the entire underworld, a monster even devils fear, dooming them to an eternity of unimaginable suffering. Shihun is absolutely crushed, demanding to know if it's really true that his parents are doomed to suffer for eternity. But Mephisto just brushes it off, pointing a finger right at our hero. With a sinister grin, the devil declares that once his bet with Faust is over, Shihun is going to be his next plaything. Leaving the terrified kid behind, Mephisto flies off into the sky, laughing like a maniac. Later that night, Shihun sits alone on his porch, staring at an old family photo. His whole life, his older sister Suin had told him their parents died in a simple accident. But now, Mephisto's words are echoing in his head, that they actually made a contract with the most vicious devil in hell, trapping their souls forever. Letting out a heavy sigh, he's suddenly grabbed by the collar and choked out by Suin, who demands to know why he's moping around like a depressed teenager hitting puberty. But Shihun isn't in the mood for jokes and decides it's finally time to confront her. He asks about her mysterious trip to the underworld 3 years ago, dropping the ultimate bomb. He wants to know if she met their parents down there. Suin freezes, her eyes wide with panic. Shihun quickly covers his tracks, claiming he accidentally figured it out because of the spiritual protection talisman she gave him. Realizing the gig is up, Suin lets out a defeated sigh, admitting she knew this day would come, just not this soon. She finally comes clean, revealing that the talisman was actually a gift from their mother. In that tragic accident, it was a massive cover-up. Years ago, the boundary between the human world and the afterlife weakened, allowing a terrifyingly powerful entity to cross over. Their parents were the first responders, and Suin was forced to watch helplessly as they fought a grueling battle to the death. They managed to banish the entity back to hell, but paid the ultimate price, getting dragged into the underworld right along with it. Desperate to save them, Suin trained herself to enter the afterlife. But the underworld was just too vast, crawling with overpowered enemies and constantly shifting landscapes. She wandered the hellscape alone, but was ultimately too weak to survive, forcing her to return home empty-handed. The trauma of her failure broke her, and she confesses that she hasn't dared to go back since. Suin warns her brother that the afterlife is literal hell, and if he really wants to visit, he can just wait until he's dead. But Shihun can't let it go. Clutching the protection talisman his mother left him, he realizes Mephisto might be his only key to finding his parents. If his genius sister couldn't survive down there, he needs the devil's knowledge to stand a chance. His serious thoughts are completely ruined when Minotaurus tries to flirt with him in the moonlight, earning the beast a swift kick out of the building. Watching from the shadows, Suin narrows her eyes, deciding she needs to keep a very close watch on her brother's bizarre new companions. Meanwhile, Mephisto is tearing through the night sky. She's rapidly losing her patience, screaming into the darkness for Faust to stop hiding and forge a new contract with her. Down in the city, the reincarnation of Faust, Lucian, is blending in perfectly with the modern world. But his peaceful night ends when he spots Azrael's patrolling the human skies. Looking down at the glowing brand on his arm, Lucian knows exactly why the enforcers of the afterlife are here. They're hunting the devil who marked him. Knowing Mephisto will tear the world apart to finish their 500-year-old feud, Lucian decides to flip the script. Instead of running, he's going to draw the devil out. Channeling his energy, he sends out a silent, dark beacon into the sky. It doesn't take long. In a flash of overwhelming dark power, Mephisto materializes right behind him, her eyes locked onto her eternal rival. The 500-year game of hide-and-seek is finally over, and a brand new contract is about to begin. The next morning, Shihun is sprinting through the streets, terrified of what Mephisto will do to him for being late to training. But as he runs, he realizes he's moving at superhuman speeds without even breaking a sweat. His body feels incredibly light. The devil's brutal training is actually working. He braces for impact as he bursts onto the rooftop, but the terrifying red-haired devil is nowhere to be seen. Just as Shihun starts to secretly hope she's gone for good, a shadow falls over him. Intense training is suddenly cut short as Mephisto crashes onto a nearby rooftop with a deafening thud. Stepping out of the debris, the devil triumphantly stands over an unconscious young man and announces that she has finally found her prize. Shihun stares in disbelief, realizing this is Faust, the legendary human who made a contract with the devil 5 centuries ago, finally reborn. Mephisto explains why the reincarnation was so impossible to track down. She points to the boy's wrist, which is wrapped in a strange, ugly paper that completely masked his demonic energy. But when she leans in to inspect it, the magical paper actually springs to life and slaps the devil right in the face. Panicking, Shihun assumes Faust is dead, but Mephisto casually admits the boy just blacked out because she flew him through the sky at breakneck speeds. Never one to be patient, the devil starts kicking the unconscious Faust to wake him up while Shihun frantically tries to hold her back. The commotion finally rouses the young man. Shihun awkwardly tries to figure out how to bridge the language barrier, but the boy cuts him off in perfect Korean, casually dropping that he speaks 13 languages. He formally introduces himself as Lucian Daya, the new Faust. Lucian immediately recognizes his old demonic partner. Mephisto is thrilled that his memories of their past lives are fully intact, greeting him like an old friend after 500 years, though she quickly notes he's just as arrogant as he used to be. When Shihun asks how he remembers his past, Lucian peels back his bandages to reveal the glowing devil's mark. He explains that he was born with the unremovable brand, and as he grew older, he began suffering from incredibly vivid dreams of a life he had already lived. One day, he experienced a profound vision of standing before a colossal, radiant being, and the moment their hands touched, his entire past rushed back into his mind. With his memories fully restored, Lucian knew exactly what was coming. He knew the ancient contract, the rivalry, and the undeniable truth that Mephisto would eventually track him down to finish their battle. Faust stands his ground, fully prepared for the devil before him. Mephisto is absolutely thrilled that he isn't beating around the bush, boasting that she got her memories back the hard way and has waited 500 long years for this exact moment. But Faust flips the script. He reveals that she didn't track him down. He lured her here to keep her from harming innocent people. Staring her down, he declares that he will never give in to her temptations, which only makes the devil burst into laughter. Faust explains that in his past life, all the youth, pleasure, and victory she handed him felt completely hollow. The only true happiness he ever found was in his final moments, sacrificing himself for others. So this time, he demands the exact opposite of their old deal. Instead of her corrupting his soul, he is going to humanize her. Mephisto is completely stunned. The idea of a human forcing a defiled devil to repent and do good deeds is totally absurd. But the sheer audacity of the challenge sparks her twisted interest, and she eagerly accepts, confident she can win this game easily. Faust drops one final bombshell. This time, their wager won't take place in the human world, it's happening in the afterlife. The revelation shocks everyone, and even Mephisto warns him that humans rarely come back from the underworld alive. But Faust is fearless, swearing he won't lose this time either. To seal the deal with blood, Mephisto remembers they need a third party. In their past lives, God himself judged their wager, but she refuses to invite that biased fossil this time. Instead, she turns to completely bewildered Shihun. With a sinister grin, she points right at our young exorcist and declares that he won't just be the witness. He will be the absolute judge who decides the winner of their 500-year rivalry. Mephisto gleefully declares that Shihun won't just be a witness. He will be the judge of her rematch with Faust, and he has to watch their fight to the bitter end. Faust immediately protests, arguing that they should call upon a god as a witness like their first contract, but the devil brushes him off. She smugly reminds Faust that she makes the rules, and if he doesn't like her choice of judge, he can find someone else. Seal the deal, Mephisto reveals her true motive. Once her bet with Faust is over, she plans to force Shihun into a contract and keep him by her side forever. Knowing exactly how to manipulate the terrified teen, she reminds him of his trapped parents. She warns that they are held captive by an entity so wicked that even she doesn't know its identity, and they will never escape without her help. Backed into a corner, Shihun reluctantly gives in. Faust tries to step in and stop the madness, but Shihun cuts him off. He realizes that if he ever wants to reach the afterlife and rescue his parents, he has to take this gamble. With renewed determination, our hero accepts his role as the judge, earning condescending praise from the grinning devil. In the afterlife, soul contracts are absolute, binding the signers' bodies and souls with almighty power. The trio is transported into a starry void to make it official. The great devil Mephistopheles and the human Faust both formally agree to the terms, and Shihun steps up, signing his soul as the official witness and judge. The stakes are set in stone. The contract will only terminate when one of them gives up by begging for a beautiful moment not to pass away. Whoever speaks that sentiment first loses, and if neither breaks, Shihun will declare the winner. With a blinding flash of magical energy, a massive beam of blue light shoots into the sky, sealing their fates. As the light fades and they return to the city rooftop, Mephisto erupts into a wild, childish victory dance. After 500 years of waiting, the devil finally has her rematch, and she is absolutely certain she is going to crush Faust this time. Faust questions if Mephisto is really confident about betting her soul and fighting in the afterlife. Mephisto is eager to head there immediately, but Faust warns her that lingering in the human world is dangerous for a devil. She just mocks his stiff attitude, promising to break him and turn him into a better devil than any angel, while Shihun nervously watches, doubting if a novice like him can really judge their 500-year rivalry. Suddenly, their tense reunion is interrupted as two imposing figures in white cloaks drop from the sky. These are Azrael's powerful angelic enforcers who were drawn straight to the city by the massive beam of light that erupted when Shihun signed his deadly contract. Mephisto is absolutely thrilled by the terrible timing. Sick of hiding her demonic presence while searching for Faust, she flashes a sinister grin and immediately charges at the heavenly enforcers, ready to tear them apart. But before she can land a lethal blow, she is yanked back midair. Faust binds her wrist with a strange slip of paper, and though Mephisto flexes her immense demonic strength to snap it, the ugly parchment refuses to budge. Bathed in a brilliant light, Faust reveals that the binding is God's papyrus, a divine gift he has mastered over the centuries. Mephisto is genuinely impressed that a human can wield the power of a god, but her bloodlust is far too strong to care, and she declares she only needs her free right hand to slaughter the angels. Faust desperately yanks the papyrus, ordering the screaming devil to stand down. He knows that if a full-scale war between a devil and two Azraels erupts in the city, countless innocent humans will be caught in the crossfire. Realizing there is only one way to prevent a massacre, Faust extends his hand, determined to drag the warmongering devil straight into the afterlife before she can unleash hell on earth. Ji-hoon is panicking, desperately trying to figure out how to stop the impending bloodbath. But Faust, fully recovered, steps up with a brilliant manipulation tactic. Knowing he can't just ask the battle-hungry devil to stand down, Faust uses reverse psychology. He tells Mephisto that if she really wants to win their bet by doing evil deeds, she should save her energy for the afterlife world where the real opponents are. Mephisto is eager to claim Faust's soul, so she listens. Faust points to two Azrael's angelic enforcers lurking nearby and tells her to let them go. Mephisto immediately argues that showing mercy isn't evil, but Faust flips the script. If she lets them run, they'll come back with an entire army, and slaughtering hundreds of angels is undeniably more evil than just killing two, right? To settle the debate, Mephisto turns to Ji-hoon, the official judge of their bet. Catching on to Faust's plan, Ji-hoon nervously agrees that fighting an army is definitely worse. Thrilled by this twisted logic, Mephisto gleefully waves the angels off, smugly declaring herself 1 point ahead in the contest. But the Azraels aren't in on the plan. Refusing to turn their backs on a devil, they launch a desperate, high-speed suicide charge straight at Mephisto, and the demon is more than happy to oblige, baring her fangs to rip them apart. Before blood can spill, Faust jumps between them, blocking the strike. He warns the angels that throwing their lives away against an opponent they can't beat accomplishes nothing. The Azraels recognize him as the legendary Faust, the man famous for beating Mephisto in their last bet, a fact that instantly pisses the devil off. Faust explains that his mission is to personally escort Mephisto to the afterlife, and trusting his legendary reputation, the angels finally stand down and retreat. With the crisis averted, Faust breathes a massive sigh of relief. He silently credits Ji-hoon for playing along perfectly, realizing that Mephisto actually picked the perfect judge for this chaotic game. Meanwhile, the devil continues to gloat about being ahead on points, completely oblivious to how easily she just got played. Mephisto is ready to throw down right then and there, but Faust calmly points out a massive loophole. Their new contract clearly states the battle must take place in the afterlife, meaning they can't fight in the human world at all. Realizing she just got tricked into a massive delay, Mephisto throws an absolute tantrum, screaming that she'll claim his soul no matter what. Watching the two of them bicker like children, Ji-hoon realizes this entire journey is going to be a massive headache. Meanwhile, back at Ji-hoon's house, his older sister Suin is busy doing her job as a pro-exorcist, setting up the spatial coordinates to banish some lingering spirits. One of the blue ghosts desperately clings to her, crying that it wants to stay in the human world with all the pretty girls instead of going back to hell. It tries to make a break for it, but ends up slamming face first into a pole before Suin aggressively drags it back. Her ghost strangling is interrupted when Ji-hoon finally peeks through the front doors. Suin starts to scold him for being late, but stops when he awkwardly mentions he brought a friend. Lucian steps up, politely introducing himself as Lucian Dai or Faust. Suin is a bit surprised by her brother's new foreign friend, but things escalate instantly when Ji-hoon nervously admits they aren't alone. With a flap of black wings, Mephisto drops in and cheerfully announces that she's a literal devil. Sensing the overwhelming demonic aura, Suin's exorcist instincts kick into overdrive. She immediately shoves Ji-hoon and Faust behind her, draws her glowing talismans, and prepares to fight for their lives against this monstrous threat. But instead of attacking, Mephisto just stares at her with a blank, unimpressed look. Ji-hoon quickly steps between them, nervously trying to defuse the situation as his sister stares at him in absolute confusion. After Ji-hoon awkwardly explains the entire situation, Suin is left utterly paralyzed by the sheer absurdity of it all. Her little brother is somehow the judge of a high-stakes bet between a legendary devil and the reincarnated Faust, and the battleground is the one place she warned him never to go, the afterlife. Ji-hoon braces himself, fully expecting his sister to beat him to a pulp. But instead of raging, Suin just sighs and gently touches his face, asking why he didn't tell her sooner. She reminds him that he has no real power to survive a demonic war, but Ji-hoon refuses to back down. He declares that he's the child of exorcists too, and he's going to become just as strong as she is to see this through. Processing the massive revelations, Ji-hoon declares that if their parents are really trapped in the afterlife, they need to launch a rescue mission immediately. Suin solemnly remembers the tragic day 14 years ago when an unidentified demon breached their world and dragged their parents into the abyss. Meanwhile, Mephisto casually wanders around Suin's property, leaving the skilled exorcist absolutely terrified. Her sanctuary is heavily warded to block invaders and contain spirits, yet this ancient devil just strolled right through her absolute barriers without even breaking stride. Mephisto's menacing aura easily terrifies the local wandering spirits, though the mighty devil is quickly humbled and disgusted by the smell of human soybean paste. Knowing that Suin plans to open a spatial portal tonight under the full moon to send off the gathered spirits, Ji-hoon begs to tag along, but Suin shuts him down instantly. Remembering the crushing, isolating helplessness she felt during her last failed rescue attempt, she refuses to let her little brother step foot in that dangerous realm. Instead, Suin turns to Faust with a desperate loophole. After confirming that their demonic bet can be amended if all parties agree, she volunteers to take Ji-hoon's place as the judge so she can go to the afterlife instead of him. Ji-hoon completely loses his mind, screaming that this is his fight too. But Suin pulls rank, reminding him that even elite exorcists die in the afterlife and he doesn't have the power to survive it. Faust and Mephisto just watch the siblings bicker, completely indifferent to which human actually takes the job. Finally, Mephisto's patience runs dry. Sick of the endless screaming, the devil unleashes a terrifying roar, demanding that the humans just go to the afterlife together. And just like that, the terms are updated, officially locking Suin in as the second witness and standby judge. The stage is set for a descent into hell. The contract sealed, the group now faces a 2-hour wait for the full moon to peak so Suin can open a spatial gate to the afterlife. Mephisto is already bored out of his mind until he spots Shihun's personal punching bag, the enslaved Minotaurus. Shihun steps up to demonstrate his training, but when he throws a casual punch, the impact is explosive. He stares at his hands in shock, realizing his body feels incredibly light, and his sealed latent power is already starting to surge. Mephisto eagerly asks for a turn, and Shihun begs him to go easy since it's his only training tool. But this is a devil we're talking about. Mephisto unleashes a devastating blow that instantly blasts the giant beast's head off and sends its massive body flying over the distant mountains. While Shihun mourns his ruined punching bag, Mephisto just pouts, complaining that his strike was way too weak to launch it further. This chaotic, overwhelming power is exactly why Suin had to step in during the contract signing. Since Mephisto needs the betting parties alive to maintain the wager, he had actually demanded Suin join as a standby judge, simply because he was convinced the fragile-looking Shihun would die instantly in the underworld. Naturally, Suin signed it without hesitation, swearing to keep her little brother breathing. While they wait for the moon, Suin apologizes to Faust for dragging him into this mess, but Faust brushes it off, noting that no one can really stop a demon anyway. Taking a quiet moment to bond with the reincarnated mage, Suin is completely unfazed that this 500-year-old soul is currently inhabiting the body of a 15-year-old boy. She warmly asks Faust to be good friends with Shihun, revealing that after their parents vanished into the afterlife, they are all each other has left, and she will sacrifice everything to protect him. Knowing the underworld will be a bloodbath, Faust suggests they test their combat capabilities to see how powerful everyone really is. Without warning, he whips out God's papyrus, a divine unbreakable artifact, and launches a blistering surprise attack right at Mephisto. The devil barely blocks the barrage of glowing whip strikes, throwing an absolute tantrum about Faust using the awful holy paper. When Faust casually suggests Mephisto try blocking Suin's attacks next, the devil crosses his arms and stubbornly refuses, pouting that he only ever attacks and refuses to defend. Stepping up to test the demon's strength, Suin pulls out a glowing thunder talisman. Mephisto just yawns, completely bored, and tells the exorcist to get it over with. Without hesitation, Suin hurls the golden energy straight at her. But the red-haired devil just catches the lightning barehanded. She mocks Suin, complaining that it barely even stings. But our exorcist isn't done yet. In a flash, she slaps 4 more elemental talismans right onto Mephisto's clothes. The demon still thinks it's a joke, completely unimpressed by the paper tags. That's exactly the opening Suin wanted. Smirking, she ignites them all at once. The 5 elements condense into a single, devastating chain reaction, triggering a massive explosion that completely engulfs the demon. Suin knows that combining 5 elements into one strike packs enough destructive force to severely damage even a high-ranking devil. But as the smoke clears, the reality of their power gap sinks in. Mephisto steps out of the crater without a single scratch, casually admitting that the blast might have hurt if she hadn't bothered to put up a shield. Suin is left completely stunned that her ultimate attack didn't even leave a mark. Faust quickly steps in to reassure her. He explains that perfectly fusing 5 conflicting elements requires an insane level of technical skill, and he's never seen a human pull it off before. Mephisto is just an anomaly, and that blast would have obliterated anyone else. Shihun starts fanboying over how awesome they both are, leaving his sister completely exasperated. Getting back to business, Suin gives her brother a harsh reality check. They are heading straight into the afterlife where anything could ambush them, and right now, Shihun is a sitting duck with 0 combat power. He panics, wondering if he can even learn to fight in time, but Suin tells him that since his body has changed, it's possible. Overjoyed, our hero celebrates that his sister is finally going to train him. Wasting no time, Suin dives straight into the basics. She demonstrates how to draw out his internal energy, instructing him to gather every drop of power into his hand, focus it without breaking concentration, and then release it all at once in a massive burst. The afterlife trip looming, Suin wastes no time teaching Shihun the absolute basics of exorcism. She instructs him to gather his physical and spiritual energy, perfect his posture, and release it all in a single flowing strike. Shihun is hyped and determined to master it quickly, but theory is always easier than practice. He tries over and over, throwing punches into the air, but he just can't get his energy to spark, quickly exhausting himself. Seeing him struggle, Suin steps in and decides to use her own energy to forcefully draw his out. She instructs him to focus, wait for the energy to unite, and then unleash it all at once. As their fists collide, a massive explosion of raw power erupts between them. The blast completely blows Shihun away, leaving him terrified but finally understanding what a true energy release feels like. While Shihun recovers, Faust checks on Suin, who is secretly hiding a numb hand. She admits to Faust that even though she was actively trying to block Shihun's energy, his raw power actually pushed her back. Our hero's sealed potential is already far more terrifying than she realized. Suin isn't about to let up. She turns back to her brother with a sly smile, announcing it's time for practical application, and his sparring partner is Mephisto. Shihoon absolutely panics at the thought of fighting a literal devil, but Suin clarifies he only needs to block a single punch. Mephisto gleefully warns that he won't hold back, and one hit could easily kill the kid. But Suin is dead serious, telling Shihoon that if he truly wants to follow them into the afterlife to save their parents, he has to prove he won't just be dead weight. As Mephisto winds up for a devastating strike, Faust questions if this extreme method is really safe. Suin reveals the truth about Shihoon's struggles, explaining that he has actually been training his body flawlessly for years. However, their mother placed a powerful protective talisman inside him when he was young, which kept him safe from demons but also completely locked his spiritual power inside. The only way to shatter that mental block is pure, unadulterated fear. Suin explains that she needs to see if Shihoon can maintain his concentration and conquer his terror when facing a monster that could instantly kill him. Facing Mephisto is the ultimate trial by fire, and the only way to force Shihoon to draw out his true power on his own. Realizing her brilliant cutthroat logic, Faust smiles, agreeing that using a legendary devil as a mere training dummy is the perfect shortcut. Faust and Suin know that using an archdevil like Mephisto for a sparring partner is incredibly dangerous, but sometimes the best way to learn how to swim is getting thrown into the deep end. Down in the dirt, our young hero tries desperately to focus, but the chaotic energy makes it almost impossible. He knows he has to get this right. Up until now, his sister has always had to force his sealed power out for him, making this his first real test. Finally hyping himself up, Shihoon calls out to begin the match, but Mephisto is already bored of waiting. The red-haired devil lunges forward with blinding speed, fully intending to end the fight in a single, brutal strike. Remembering his sister's lessons, Shihoon attempts a technique called release, gathering every ounce of power from his body and soul to unleash it all at once. He channels the surging energy into his fist and meets the charging demon head-on, triggering a massive shockwave. Mephisto is genuinely surprised that the kid is putting up a much better fight than yesterday, but she quickly reminds him that she hasn't even started trying yet. With a flick of her wrist, she throws a devastating counterpunch that rocks Shihoon to his core, and he immediately feels his strength buckling under the sheer weight of her demonic aura. Seeing the boy falter, Faust steps in, firing a beam of light to hold the devil back just long enough for Shihoon to recover. From the sidelines, Suin furiously berates her brother's terrible posture, screaming at him to remember his lifelong training and focus everything into a single uninterrupted shot. Pushed to his absolute limit, Shihoon centers himself, gathers a blinding aura of blue energy, and roars as he unleashes absolutely everything he has. The impact triggers a colossal explosion. Panting heavily behind a blue energy shield, Shihoon opens his eyes to realize he actually managed to blow the archdevil away. Instantly forgetting the danger, he starts jumping around and bragging to Faust and his sister, begging them to help him come up with a cool name for his new super punch. Suin immediately shuts him down, scolding him that basic moves don't get special names, but Faust is genuinely impressed. He admits he's never seen a human blow Mephisto away with raw physical force, pointing out that Shihoon's released energy actually manifested as a massive, ethereal third fist. Hearing that, our hero proudly claims the name for himself, while his sister just shakes her head. Meanwhile, Mephisto comes flying back out of the dust, absolutely furious that she got tricked into being a training dummy. She tries to play off the hit, bragging that a mere human could never actually hurt a demon, but she can't hide her shock. She demands to know how Shihoon went from getting swatted by her pinky finger yesterday to wielding such monstrous power today, completely oblivious to the fact that she just helped him unlock it. But right after declaring his grand resolve to save their parents, Shihoon's body completely gives out. He collapses face first into the dirt, panting heavily as his sister rushes over. Suin explains that since it's his first time releasing his power, his body can't handle the strain. Because he lacks technique and control, every time he uses a skill, he'll be completely paralyzed for 3 full minutes. Hearing this, Shihoon groans, realizing he still has a massive mountain to climb. But as she looks at her brother, Suin realizes something incredible. The protection talisman inside him has kept his exorcist abilities locked away for 14 years, acting as a dam. Now that the seal is broken, all that accumulated energy is flooding his system without a drop wasted. 14 years of untapped potential is finally waking up, giving him raw destructive power on par with a high-ranking demon. Later that night, the squad gears up for the real mission. Shihoon limbers up, checking in with Faust and Mephisto before turning to his sister. Suin steps out in full combat gear, looking every bit the elite exorcist she is, and declares that it's finally time. They gather in a desolate field along with a bunch of wandering souls who are violently protesting their upcoming trip to the afterlife. Unfazed, Suin tells Shihoon to pack the ghosts up, even if he has to shove them in a box, promising to send them off nicely. She then channels her energy, casting a high-level spatial spell that creates a glowing path directly to the underworld. Even a devil like Mephisto is genuinely impressed by her sheer magical control. With the gateway open, the group steps into the blinding pillar of light. They find themselves floating through a blindingly bright dimensional rift. Shihoon is practically buzzing with excitement as they approach the entrance, though he gets distracted by the souls helplessly tumbling through the void. Suin explains that without physical bodies, spirits are incredibly light and just get swept up in the dimensional current. But when Shihun keeps bombarding her with questions, Suin completely snaps. She yells at him to shut up so she can actually concentrate on keeping the portal stable, and as she focuses, the group and the screaming souls are violently yanked forward toward the underworld. Transition to the afterlife goes completely off the rails. While hurling through the spatial rift, one of the clumsy blue souls crashes right into Suin. She completely loses her temper, but her violent outburst destabilizes the entire dimensional tunnel. By the time the chaotic shockwaves settle and Suin catches her breath, she realizes something terrible. Shihun and most of the souls have completely vanished. Meanwhile, our hero comes crashing down from the sky, slamming hard into a field of tall, golden grass. Clutching his pounding head, Shihun realizes he's actually made it to the underworld. He quickly spots the exact same troublemaking soul that caused the dimensional collapse, groaning in the dirt. Shihun scolds the little blob, figuring they must have been dropped somewhere near the underworld's entrance. He gathers up a few more scattered souls from the grass, and then it hits him. He is completely unsupervised. No overprotective sister, no bickering devils. Instead of panicking, Shihun gets a massive grin on his face. He declares it his personal adventure time and eagerly charges forward, treating the dangerous afterlife like a solo leveling quest. But after wandering for a while, things stop making sense. A cluster of traditional buildings looms on the horizon, completely contradicting his sister's warnings. Suin had explicitly told him the area before the river was nothing but empty space. Despite the eerie atmosphere, Shihun doesn't hesitate. He confidently points a finger toward the unknown and leads his terrified ghost entourage straight into the mysterious town. Looking for a place to catch their breath, he approaches one of the massive structures and pushes open its heavy wooden doors, stepping blindly into whatever awaits him inside. Stepping through the gate to the afterlife, Shihun somehow gets separated from the group and wanders into a dimly lit, empty bar. He asks the soul woman at the counter if she's seen his crew, describing his short-tempered sister Suin, the clever Faust, and the terrifying little devil Mephisto. The woman plays innocent, explaining that this tavern sits right near the entrance to the underworld, making living humans a rare sight. But her creepy vibe sets off all of Shihun's alarms. He makes an excuse to leave, only to find the door locked tight. The woman's friendly smile twists into a sinister grin as she declares him fresh merchandise. She reveals that she isn't human at all, but a main, a soul trapped in an incomplete, cursed shell. For a main to truly reincarnate, they need to steal a real, physical vessel. And right now, Shihun's human body is the ultimate prize. Knowing our hero is completely trapped, the witch offers him a wager. If he wins, she opens the door, but if he loses, she takes his body and demands everything he knows about his friends. Realizing this monster is plotting to hunt down Suin and the others next, Shihun is furious. But in the underworld, you play by the underworld's rules. He aggressively accepts the bet. To guarantee she won't just kill him anyway, the witch summons a glowing blue underworld contract, a magically absolute agreement. The stakes are set and the game is deceptively simple, a classic shell game. She hides 2 beads under 4 cups and Shihun gets exactly 1 chance to find them or lose his life. Shihun's training is immediately put to the test when he's challenged to a high-stakes shell game. A shady woman lines up 4 cups, drops in 2 beads, and shuffles them at blinding speed. She smirks, telling him he only gets 1 chance to find the prize. But our boy doesn't sweat it, he just watches her every move with dead focus. After a tense moment, Shihun makes his choice, but he's not playing her game. Instead of guessing, he completely exposes her scam. He coldly breaks down how she palmed the bead, mixed the cups as a distraction, and faked a laugh just to hide the bead inside her mouth. He mocks her pitiful sleight of hand, flipping the script and declaring himself the winner of their little bet. The worst part about hustlers is that they're absolute sore losers. The woman drops her innocent act, admitting that his victory officially opens the door for his contract, but she refuses to let him walk away that easily. Suddenly, the room turns hostile as she and her massive thugs lunge at him, screaming that they won't let fresh meat escape. But Shihun isn't the helpless kid he was yesterday. He immediately unleashes his newly trained energy, dodging their lethal strikes and countering with bone-shattering punches. He smashes through solid rock and kicks away their dark attacks, turning their little ambush into an absolute beatdown while the woman watches her trap fall apart. Shihun finds himself surrounded by a swarm of enemies known as mains, who are closing in on a group of trembling, defenseless souls. He remembers Suin's strict warning. While his new skill is devastating, his lack of experience means he can only unleash it once before being paralyzed for 3 minutes, forcing him to fight smart. The enemy leader, a dark-haired woman, furiously orders her men to attack. But Shihun doesn't back down, diving straight into the mob and effortlessly dodging their strikes to counter with lightning-fast punches of his own. Taking a breather, he confidently reassures the terrified souls, proudly declaring that he's trained his whole life for this and that it's an exorcist's duty to safely deliver them to the afterlife. The souls are moved, until one bluntly reminds him that he technically isn't a licensed exorcist yet, ruining his cool moment. Suddenly, a glowing contract appears, declaring Shihun the winner of the trial and unlocking the grand double doors ahead. As more thugs try to ambush him, Shihun easily blasts them away. After surviving years of brutal beatdowns from his sister and his recent death-defying sparring matches with Mephisto, these low-level grunts feel like they're moving in slow motion. But the dark-haired woman isn't ready to give up. With a massive crash, a hulking, scarred giant named Jack drops into the room, instantly crushing one of his own men. Jack laughs at the woman for struggling against a mere kid, while Shihun stares up in shock, realizing this new main is built like a tank. Flashing a sinister grin, Jack steps up to take over the fight. He launches a blindingly fast rush attack that completely catches Shihun off guard. Our hero tries to dodge, but the giant's speed is too overwhelming, sending Shihun crashing brutally into the ground as Jack's manic laughter echoes through the hall. But the underworld doesn't give you breaks. Right after his intense training, the group is ambushed by a gang of thugs looking to capture Shihun as precious merchandise. A massive, scarred brute named Jack batters our hero, mocking him to just give up. Shihun realizes that a single direct hit from this giant will crush him like a cookie, but instead of running, he remembers his sister's lessons. Spotting an opening, Shihun charges straight into the danger zone, pours every ounce of his energy into his fist, and unleashes a devastating technique that blasts the giant away in a single explosive blow. Shockwave clears, and the remaining 6 thugs are absolutely terrified that their heavy hitter was one shot. But Shihun is hiding a deadly secret. The attack completely drained him. His body is paralyzed, his muscles are screaming, and he needs 3 full minutes just to move his fingers again. Knowing he's a sitting duck, he decides to play a dangerous game of poker. He stares down the terrified gang and bluffs, calmly asking the strongest among them if they want to keep fighting or just surrender. He just needs to buy a little more time, but the enemy leader, a twisted woman with a monstrous tongue, doesn't fall for it. She notices his trembling legs and realizes he hasn't moved a single inch since his attack. Smirking at his desperate attempt to stall, she calls his bluff and lunges forward to tear him apart. Shihun braces for the fatal strike, unable to even lift his arms. But right before she reaches him, a golden amulet suddenly drops at her feet. Before the thug can even process what she's looking at, the talisman triggers, summoning a massive triple lightning strike that completely engulfs her in thousands of volts. The massive recoil from Shihun's explosive attack sends him flying into an unknown area where he is immediately ambushed by shadowy figures. Still completely paralyzed from his own technique, our hero is totally defenseless until Suin and Faust burst into the fray to save him. Mephisto also joins the charge, furiously pummeling the remaining ambushers. The red-haired devil is absolutely livid, not because they attacked Shihun, but because these low-level thugs didn't even recognize who he was. Suin immediately grabs her younger brother, aggressively scolding him for getting lost in such a dangerous place. Still drained, Shihun ignores the yelling, just relieved that his sister found him before things got worse. When Shihun asks how they managed to track him down, Suin reveals their strategy. Faust used his brilliant mind to calculate Shihun's exact launch trajectory, allowing Mephisto to sniff him out like a bloodhound, a comparison the prideful devil doesn't appreciate in the slightest. As the artificial structures around them suddenly vanish, Faust explains that the enemies who ambushed Shihun were sleazy underworld hunters. These scavengers use magic to build trap portals, tricking lost newcomers into inescapable webs to rob them. With the battle over, Shihun finally regains his mobility. He complains about the brutal 3-minute paralysis penalty of his new attack, but Suin bluntly tells him he just needs more practice. Still incredibly annoyed by the detour, she takes her frustration out on the floating blue souls that gathered around them during the search. After securely tying up the defeated hunters and leaving them for the local Azrael patrols to find, the group prepares to move on. With the lost child safely recovered, Mephisto excitedly takes the lead as they resume their trek. Faust notes that they only have one more river to cross before reaching the underworld entrance, but their journey is about to get a lot more crowded. An ever-growing, massive line of trailing souls marches behind them, following the group like an endless blue candy bracelet. As the swarm of blue spirits continues to follow them deeper into the bleak landscape, Shihun's stomach starts to rumble. He hasn't eaten since they arrived, and Suin admits she didn't pack anything, relying entirely on Faust's promise to handle their supplies. Annoyed by the humans' constant need for rest, Mephisto complains while Shihun asks Faust what's on the menu. That's when Faust reveals another incredible ability of God's papyrus, the power of creation. As long as it's not a weapon or something against God's will, he can manifest anything he's seen before. With a flash of divine light, Faust materializes a full feast of noodles, omelette rice, and tteokbokki, blowing Suin's cooking completely out of the water. With their stomachs full, the group marches on until they reach the edge of a vast, fog-choked river. Mephisto impatiently suggests flying across, but Faust warns that the thick mist would easily separate them. This river marks the true boundary between the human realm and the underworld, and there's only one safe way across. They have to wait for Karen the ferryman. Waiting doesn't sit well with the devil. Bored out of her mind, Mephisto tries to goad Shihun into a fight, and when that fails, she ropes him into an embarrassing devil dance, earning Shihun a swift beating from his sister while Faust quietly settles down with a book. Finally, the sound of oars breaks the silence as a wooden boat pierces through the thick fog. Karen the ferryman arrives, his face hidden beneath a hood and his eyes terrifyingly hollow. But Shihun remembers a detail from one of Faust's books. The ferryman doesn't work for free. Stepping up to the eerie guide, Shihun reaches out and drops the required toll into Karen's waiting hand. Shihun isn't about to let a cursed soul steal his body. After managing to break free from the maid's trap and reuniting with his friends, the group finally reaches the banks of the Akron River. Stepping up to the grim ferryman, Faust offers a handful of his worldly items as payment for the ride. Karen snatches the treasure in a flash, leaving Faust crying over his lost valuables before politely asking for passage across the water. Karen stares in silence before finally grunting that it's first come, first served. The moment he speaks, the swarm of lost souls frantically rushes the boat, filling almost every available seat in a matter of seconds. Not wanting to be left behind, Mephisto violently slashes through a rushing spirit, claiming the last vacant spots for herself and aggressively threatening the remaining souls to wait for the next ride. Assessing the situation, Suin does the math. With the boat so packed, only 2 of them can fit on board. Since a round trip takes half a day, they'll have to split into 2 teams. But a horrifying realization suddenly dawns on Shihun, Suin, and Faust. One of them is going to be left behind with Mephisto. The devil casually announces that she'll take the second trip to avoid the annoying crowd, completely oblivious to the trio's sheer panic. To her, it doesn't matter who goes first, but to them, it's a matter of life and death. The group being stuck alone with Mephisto is a fate worse than hell itself. They agree to settle it the only fair way, a single high-stakes round of rock, paper, scissors where the loser stays with the devil. Sweating bullets and fighting for their lives, the 3 throw their hands with terrifying intensity, and the final result leaves 2 of them in absolute jaw-dropping shock. Jihun's sharp eyes completely dismantle the main's magical cheating, allowing him to win the wager and leaving the cursed woman screaming in absolute shock. Capitalizing on the victory, Shihun manages to reunite with Faust and secure passage on Karen's boat. Back on the shore, Suin watches them sail off into the mist, calling out her goodbyes as Shihun promises to see her later. With her brother gone, Suin is left behind with a little blue slime spirit and, to her annoyance, Mephisto. The devil immediately starts complaining about how utterly boring the underworld is. When the brave little slime tries to tell him off, Mephisto just ignores it, stretches his demonic wings, and decides to fly off into the purple sky to find some entertainment on his own. Now entirely alone except for the overly flirtatious blue slime, which she quickly threatens to flatten into a pancake, Suin takes in her desolate surroundings. A strange, heavy atmosphere hangs in the air, giving her a bad feeling, but she tries to brush it off, figuring nothing too crazy can happen in just half a day. But she couldn't be more wrong. Deep within the towering, jagged cliffs of the canyon, a massive, horned beast drags its heavy chains through the dust. Catching Suin's scent on the wind, the shadowy monster drools at the prospect of tasting fresh human meat for the first time in ages. Meanwhile, out on the vast Akron River, Shihun and Faust are completely enveloped in a thick, eerie fog. Shihun nervously questions if they're even going the right way, but Faust assures him that Karen has been ferrying souls for eternity and knows exactly what he's doing, though they quickly quiet down when the towering ferryman glares back at them. Taking advantage of the quiet ride, Shihun asks Faust about his legendary past life. Faust's expression darkens as he admits his ancient sins can never truly be washed away, though he notes that his original battle against Mephisto was epic enough to catch God's attention. He explains the irony of their new wager. 500 years ago, the devil tried to corrupt him, but now Faust is flipping the script to rehabilitate the demon. He refuses to lose this bet, but before he can finish, a massive, dark tentacle suddenly erupts from the misty water. Back on the shoreline, Suin sits in the dry grass, worrying about her brother and relieved that Mephisto wandered off. Her peace is interrupted by noisy chattering, and she turns to find the blue spirits literally gambling with coins. As she angrily scolds them for running a casino in the afterlife, the heavy metallic clank of chains echoes behind her, and the massive, clawed beast steps out of the shadows. While Shihun battles for his life against the main, his older sister Suin finds herself in her own deadly encounter. A towering minotaur blocks her path, drooling at the thought of tasting human flesh for the first time in centuries. Knowing words are useless against a starving beast, Suin orders the vulnerable blue souls to flee to safety while she steps up to handle the monster alone. Meanwhile, having survived his own ambush and regrouped with Faust and Mephisto, Shihun continues his journey across the misty Akron River aboard Karen's ferry. The group tries to get some much-needed rest, but the eerie silence is shattered when massive tentacles erupt from the murky water. Before anyone can react, one of the grotesque appendages wraps around Shihun and violently hoists him into the air. Seeing his passenger in danger, the ferryman Karen doesn't hesitate. Channeling his dark energy into his wooden staff, the old man unleashes a massive strike that obliterates the tentacle, sending Shihun crashing safely back into the rocking boat. Karen grimly identifies the beast as Octopus, an underworld monster that has no business hunting in this river. As dozens more tentacles breach the surface to surround the tiny vessel, Shihun pushes through the pain and ignites his fist with exorcist energy, ready to give the beast a fight it won't forget. And back on dry land, Suin stands her ground as the Minotaur charges, ready to show the underworld exactly why she is one of the strongest exorcists alive. While Shihun is left paralyzed from his fight miles away in the desolate wasteland, his sister Suin is locked in her own deadly battle against a massive bull-headed mane. The monster drools at the sight of her, boasting that it won't even leave her bones behind. Knowing that a single hit from this beast could kill her, Suin realizes she needs her ultimate technique, the 5 rings, the same devastating move she once tested on Mephisto. But since this monster won't just stand still and take it, she pivots to a smarter strategy. Remembering from her past trips to the underworld that every mane has a fatal elemental weakness, she decides to flip the script. Determined to find that weakness, she immediately goes on the offensive, throwing a glowing talisman to unleash a blinding lightning burst. The beast barely flinches, scoffing at the attack, but Suin is already chaining her strikes, following up with a freezing ice blast and a torrent of water. The monster recoils in shock, completely caught off guard by a human exorcist who can rapidly cycle through all 5 elemental affinities. The beast quickly figures out her game plan. Since a mane's spiritual body is inherently tied to one specific element, hitting them with their exact counter leaves them completely defenseless. It realizes Suin is intentionally rapid-firing different elements just to expose its fatal flaw. Refusing to be used as target practice, the monstrous bull decides to stop holding back. In a gruesome display of brute strength, it reaches up and violently snaps off its own horns with its bare hands. Channeling its dark energy, the beast fuses the severed bone into a massive, glowing spear, ready to annihilate her. Armed with its deadly new weapon, the monster charges. Suin desperately counters with a massive fire blast, but the beast just roars through the flames and swings its horned spear with terrifying force. The sheer impact of the shockwave shatters Suin's defenses, triggering a massive explosion that sends her flying backward across the wasteland. But just as things look hopeless, a mysterious figure wielding a glowing staff suddenly appears in the sky above the battlefield. Blasted back by the group's sudden arrival, the female mane crashes to the ground, but Mephisto isn't about to let her off easy. He unleashes his enslaved giant beast, the Minotaurus, who bears down on the woman with a fiery fist, fully intending to make a meal out of her. But instead of begging for mercy, the deranged spirit just stares up at the monster and laughs maniacally. With that threat seemingly handled, the group resumes their perilous journey across the underworld, boarding Karen's boat to cross the treacherous Akarin River. But the dark waters are far from safe. Suddenly, massive tentacles erupt from the murky depths, thrashing violently toward the vessel. Shihun immediately jumps into action, throwing devastating punches to blast the fleshy appendages away. He dodges whip-like strikes and delivers powerful kicks to protect the vulnerable blue souls riding with them. But no matter how many tentacles he destroys, more just keep coming. Shihun and Suin quickly realize they're fighting a losing battle against an 8-legged monstrosity, and the swarm of attacks seems completely endless. The unseen beast changes tactics, violently rocking the boat to shake its passengers loose. Shihun screams for everyone to hold on tight, but the impact is simply too strong. The boat violently tips, and to Shihun and Suin's absolute horror, 2 of the helpless blue souls are tossed over the edge and plummet straight toward the dark waters below. As the souls splash into the treacherous river, Shihun desperately screams out for Karen the ferryman to help. But things go from bad to worse as the true form of their attacker finally breaches the surface, a colossal kraken-like monster that wraps its massive tentacles entirely around their sinking ship. Down in the water, the fallen souls huddle together in sheer terror, bracing for the end, until a mysterious hand gently pats one of them on the head. Faust comforts the terrified blue souls, promising that he, Mephisto, and Karen will get them to safety. But they still have a massive problem, the swarm of giant octopus monsters thrashing in the water. Shihun wonders how they can possibly fight so many, but Faust already has the answer. He points out the leader hiding in the back with a flashing horn. Kill the alpha and the rest of the swarm will scatter. Catch is that the leader is hiding safely behind a wall of tentacles, meaning they have to strike the exact second it shows an opening. Faust knows his god's papyrus isn't built for a one-hit kill, but Shihun's ultimate attack, the same one that rattled Mephisto, definitely is. So Faust steps up to play the hook, unleashing a massive ribbon of papyrus to drag the monster straight into Shihun's striking range. Shihun watches in awe as Faust flawlessly navigates his energy through the chaotic maze of thrashing legs, reading the monster's movements a step ahead. With a sharp snap, the glowing ribbon snags the leader's skull. Faust ruthlessly yanks the massive beast forward, declaring that a monster of this level is child's play. But the swarm isn't giving up that easily. The other tentacles desperately latch onto their leader, grinding Faust's pull to a dead halt. Faust just smirks, revealing he has another trick up his sleeve. If he can't drag the monster to them, they'll just go to the monster. He calls out to Karen, and the ferryman immediately guns their boat straight into the turbulent, deadly waters. As they plow through the swarm, Faust relentlessly clears the path, snapping the incoming tentacles left and right. Suddenly, the monstrous leader breaches the surface, roaring right in front of them. Faust yells for Shihun to take the shot, and our hero doesn't hesitate. Channeling every ounce of his power, Shihun unleashes a devastating, explosive blast of blue energy straight into the beast. Massive hit connects, and Shihun cheers his victory until reality hits him like a truck. The paralyzing side effect of his ultimate attack instantly kicks in again, leaving him completely frozen and plummeting toward the deadly water. But before he can take a fatal plunge, Faust shoots out his papyrus, snagging our paralyzed hero and yanking him safely back to the boat. Out on the water, Shihun is thrilled to finally regain control of his body as the terrifying octopus monsters vanish into the mist. He eagerly thanks Faust for saving them, though the humble mage insists he was just following orders. Our hero even gives a shout out to Karen for an epic oar attack that cleared their path, allowing their small boat to safely navigate the murky depths. Meanwhile, somewhere in the desolate, fog-choked wasteland of the underworld, Mephisto is flying around completely bored out of his mind. The archevil complains that the thick mist is ruining his chances of finding any sloppy hunters to toy with, but his boredom instantly vanishes when the sound of distant explosions echoes through the purple sky. Thrilled by the prospect of violence, he rushes toward the noise and spots a massive battle raging below. Peering through the dust, Mephisto is shocked to recognize the fighters. It's Suin locked in a brutal, high-stakes deathmatch with the Minotaurus. The massive, roaring beast mocks the exorcist, telling her to just give up and become his next meal, and as she's knocked to the ground, it looks like she might actually be cornered. Suin is a master tactician. She knows every demonic beast has a specific elemental attribute and a fatal opposite weakness. Since her first 3 strikes did absolutely 0 damage, she completely rules out water, fire, and wind. That leaves only lightning or earth. Because she can only channel one element at a time, she has to make a 50-50 gamble and time her counterattack perfectly with the monster's next strike. As the beast lunges, Suin unleashes a devastating wind blast. The gamble pays off perfectly. The Minotaurus is swallowed by a howling vortex and roars in absolute agony. Suin smirks, revealing she ruled out lightning because the beast didn't give off any electromagnetic static when it got close. Now absolutely certain that it's an Earth-type monster, she pulls out 6 glowing wind talismans, ready to finish the fight for real while the beast sweats in sheer panic. Watching from his perch, Mephisto actually pouts. He complains that the giant cow hasn't learned a single thing about defending against wind attacks, and he hates seeing a good fight end so quickly. Not wanting the entertainment to stop just yet, a mischievous, wicked grin spreads across the devil's face as he contemplates stepping in to spice things up, right as Suin charges up her final barrage. Before the towering Minotaur can even land a hit on Suin, a tiny red blur sneaks up behind him. It's Mephisto, popping out with a playful peekaboo that sends the massive beast into a confused frenzy. The monster thrashes wildly, but the demon dodges every frantic swipe with blinding speed, effortlessly toying with his prey before forcing the exhausted beast to its knees in surrender. As Mephisto casually steps on the defeated creature, the monster finally gets a good look at his attacker. All the fight instantly leaves his body as he stammers in absolute terror, recognizing the legendary archdemon. When Suin asks if they know each other, Mephisto happily introduces the beast as the infamous Minotaur of Crete, a monster who became a total laughingstock after being outsmarted by the very humans he tried to eat. The Minotaur begs him not to bring up his disgraceful past, but he's even more mind-blown that a mere human like Suin is talking so casually to a terrifying demon lord. Trying to salvage his pride, the Minotaur grumbles that he could have easily crushed the human girl if Mephisto hadn't interfered. But the demon just flashes a sinister smile, pointing out that he actually stepped in to save the monster from Suin's wrath. Curious, Mephisto asks why the beast is lingering on the riverbank instead of entering the underworld. The Minotaur reveals he's serving a punishment for accidentally killing some of the angel Azrael's minions. He shows off a supposedly unbreakable angelic shackle clamped to his ankle, whining that he spent 200 years trying to loosen it so he can finally pass through the gateway. Without missing a beat, Mephisto grabs the indestructible chain and effortlessly snaps it right off. The Minotaur is speechless with gratitude until the demon flashes a wicked grin. A devil's help never comes free, and Mephisto gleefully declares that the beast now owes him his life, forcing the monster to serve as their personal muscle for the rest of their journey. From across the foggy waters, Shihun dramatically calls out to check on his sister, frantically worrying that the beast might have hurt her. Suin dryly brushes off her brother's over-the-top concern, but as she looks at her new monstrous companion, she sighs, realizing they just added one more massive headache to their party. Meanwhile, on the far shore of the Acheron, Shihun and Faust wait patiently in the desolate landscape, noting that the ferryman Karen should be returning with the rest of their group any minute now. Having survived the churning waters of the Acheron, Shihun and Faust finally reach the icy shoreline and reunite with the others. Shihun casually asks his sister if everything went smoothly on her end, but his jaw drops when a massive, towering beast suddenly looms over him. With his job done, the grim ferryman Karen silently rows away into the mist. Faust watches him go, admitting that the stern spirit truly is the best boatman in the underworld. Back on shore, Mephisto gleefully introduces their new pet. He didn't just defeat the flesh-eating Minotaur, he enslaved it to use as a personal pack mule and even taught the giant beast to hurl insults at Faust for making them wait. But the one truly terrorizing the monster is Suin. She hops onto the beast's back, laughing maniacally as she whips it forward like a giant, hairy racehorse, leaving the poor creature completely traumatized by its new masters. As they cross the desolate, snowy wasteland, Shihun wonders how much farther they have to go. Spotting their destination in the distance, Mephisto suddenly challenges the boy to a race, declaring that the loser will have to fight him in a death match. Before Shihun can even process the absurd stakes, they both blast off at blinding speeds, leaving Faust and Suin behind to sigh at the festival of idiots. The group finally regroups at the base of a colossal black monolith. Staring up at the towering doors, Suin gives her brother one last warning. Beyond this point lies actual hell, and there is no turning back. But our young hero doesn't hesitate for a second. He just smiles, smacks his fists together, and declares he's ready to push through. As they wonder how to actually open the massive gateway, a sudden burst of swirling energy erupts in front of them. The light fades to reveal a strange, Chiba-like girl who cheerfully welcomes the intruders to gateway number 124.